Hello guys, Nugi here, and this will be a first impressions of the 2.5 patch notes for Path of Exile. I haven't gone too much into detail on some of these notes prior to this, so this will be just my very first impressions on the patch notes. So take it as that. Some of my opinions might change over time as we get more information. Yeah, so let's just get into it straight away. So Content 2.5 is the big patch for the next Challenge League, the Breach League. Now let's see what we have here. So yeah, so there's the whole Breach League, which I guess it's a somewhat interesting league. You spawn some monsters, you get some items, and that's fine. I don't think I want to talk too much about the actual league itself. Let's instead go on to the to what's important, is what it's adding. So we have new content. There's going to be plenty of uniques. That's a good thing. I do think that the uniques that they are adding this time around, when I look at them, they seem fairly balanced. I haven't seen any outliers just yet, in the same sense as we had Cosbreeze last league, which was fairly unbalanced. Especially in a world where they just, I believe that they just nerfed other cast and crit variations of Discharge, and then they introduced something that did the same thing but better. Seemed a little bit silly. I don't think we have something like that in this patch, or at least I haven't seen it. There is the bow that pretty much gives you what's it called? There's the bow that gives you the elemental prolife, basically, which could be an outlier and be very strong in the same sense that we have elementalist. So that could be a thing, and there are other items that could be outliers, but it will come down to some testing. Going on, we have the new cast on channel gem, which is an interesting gem. One thing to note with this gem is that there is a damage penalty on it. One thing that in the past we had was with cast and crit, you were forced to using an attack that didn't really do much for you in terms of doing damage on the attack itself. It did have the option of applying stuff like EE and curses and other things. But it wasn't a skill in itself. And so I think the cast on channeling, because you can use a spell to cast another spell, there has to be some limitations, and you cannot just give it a more multiplier, as it could turn out to be imbalanced. So I think it's good that they're keeping it a little bit on the down low in terms of not really adding a multiplier to it. So I think cast and channel is getting introduced in a correct way. Would it need some buffs for later on? Maybe. But I think starting just introducing it like this is a good first step. Vault Breach will be interesting whether or not we can use this to break the game. You create a breach at your location. I believe that in the past we had was it a neck that would like spawn things whenever you would take it on or off. I believe that in the past we had something similar to this where you could create monsters over and over again. I remember in Malakai's area you could do that, and you could have infinite charges, and you could use them to prolife from and whatever. We'll see how this turns out. This could actually be extremely powerful, and it could also enable certain flash builds and stuff on certain boss fights. So we will have to see how this actually ends out working. At least it will be interesting. What do we have here? Early areas have been cosmetically improved. I'm always in favor of cosmetic improvements, especially early on. as it gives a better feel for new players. So that is a good thing. I appreciate these kind of improvements. And in line in going with that, we have the new features with DirectX 11, which is amazing. In general, there's a lot less FPS drops, at least what I've experienced so far, and I think a lot of people would agree on this, that just overall performance of the game has vastly improved with 2.5, which is very, very nice. Another huge improvement is the melee targeting. Melee action targeting has been greatly improved, where it will seek out. Basically, you're going to attack into an area and it's going to seek out a monster close by and attack that instead. So before, you had people, before 2.5, we were using multi-strike to get the auto-targeting function, and people would then just attack with the multi-strike out into the air, missing the first, meaning that the first attack would be lost, and then it would start attacking, aimbotting to things, and that was how you would get this functionality, and now you just have it, so you don't have to do that anymore. Also, there's going to be a lot of increased range, melee range on basically everything. So the range of melee abilities have been vastly improved as well, which is nice. They are adding they're displaying ranges on item descriptions. I think this is a step in the right direction. In the past, GG has been afraid to give players too much information to not overwhelm them, but I think withholding information can be just as bad. So this is a good step forward. Various improvements to preloading, again, some good changes for performance. Essence changes. Let's see here. Yeah, so the Essence changes. Essence League was the previous league, which introduced a new crafting tool. Basically, it's an alchemy orb in a new package with some predetermined stats on them, so that you have more control over what kind. Let's say you want cold resist on an item, then you can take your essence that will then have the guaranteed roll of cold resist, and you can craft that. So it makes crafting easier and more accessible, especially early on for players, where an alchemy orb for a new player can be very hard to understand, as it gives you random modifiers to an item, and you have no idea what kind of modifiers, so you can't really, you're not really that willing to risk the alchemy orb early on. Compare this to essences. Now you can see on the currency itself what you're getting, which is a nice feature for the players who are less experienced with crafting overall. They're nerfing the actually, let's just go through these. Yeah, so they're massively decreasing the spawn rate, which is necessary to not overwhelm again the players from just having too many things happening, like boxes, essences, shrines, and all these. So that's necessary. And as you go up in levels, the lower levels do no longer appear, so you're not going to be faced with the bad ones all the time, which is a nice thing to, or it's nice not to have that happen, basically. Essence of Woe are being nerfed a lot, meaning that this is a nerf to ES. A lot of people have been craving for the life improvements and ES nerfs. Basically what they're saying is they want the disparity between life and ES to go down, and with changing the values on Essence of Woe, which was pushing ES gear to a much higher level than previously that you were previously able to, this will definitely decrease the disparity between the two. So this is very good. Then there are some some nerfs to some of the other slightly too powerful essences. Horror, Insanity, all these. We have Essence of Delirium. I think 750 might be too little. I think they might need to bring it down to like 500. So we will see how impactful this will be. This is still insanely strong. Just the power of Delirium already was crazy. So even bringing it down to 750 maybe it's enough, maybe it needs a little bit more of a nerf, we'll see. One of the things is that the Delirium builds were mainly ED builds. Like their upper power is limited. They will never reach the same of some of the attack builds and other spell builds because they can't scale with crit and other abilities. So there's a limit to how much power you can get, and this is one of the ways of pushing that further. So I think Delirium as a way to further those builds is actually a good idea. But yeah, it was quite powerful. Okay, map mods. This is something I really want to talk about. On some of these I am happy, and others I really find myself to be questioning kind of what is it GGG is trying to achieve with map mods in general. So let's go over these. Grounded, Moldering, and Combustible has turned into one. I think that's fine. Right, so now we have All Resist and Chaos Resist. So this will apply to both to all resistances, and it will apply to Chaos as well. So now we actually have a modifier against Chaos builds. We have a lot of Poison builds out there. We have a lot of Chaos builds out there, and they have been fairly unaffected by previous map mods. So this will definitely. This is bringing that in line to where it should be at least, so that's okay. The Stasis mod, let's see here, that prevented life and mana regen will now also prevent ES regen. This is very important. I think this is something that people have not really considered still in their outrage against life versus ES, is that some of the map mods are heavily favoring ES builds. No regen was one of them, because you would still gain, you were still able to, you could lose half your ES pool and it would still regen, literally negating what Stasis would do. So this would dumpster life-based builds a lot harder than ES builds, furthering the disparity. So this is bringing it back in line to where, well, you can't have everything being ES. So that is a good change. Let's see here. Smothering is a very good change as well, I think. One thing I've been a big, I have talked to length about is the disparity between and the inconsistency of mana, especially in maps. I kind of lost track of. Okay, so yeah. So basically, the way right now that we have resource generation in PoE has for a long time been really off balance, I think. Blood magic back in the day was usually used a lot more to overcome heavy mana cost. So there was a few ways to overcome mana cost issues. It was blood magic or mana regen, and so on. When they introduced, or when they added, I don't remember when it was. Oh yeah, we had pack size modifiers, and then we had all these other modifiers earlier in the old school maps. And then they changed it to, they removed the increased area size of maps and the pack size of maps and the magic monsters, and they consolidated they put the pack size inside of certain map modifiers, and Smothering was one of them, to where regen was now regen builds were now punished for doing pack size maps. And the way people play this game, or that we play the game right now, is that we want to have as much pack size because that is how we yield XP. That is how you gain the most XP and the most loot, by getting more monsters introduced to the maps. And so any build that cannot do these modifiers are immediately punished. So let's say you have your build that is enabling its resource management through mana, and then you have to run half regen maps and all these style of maps at the same time. Then you feel that you're unnecessarily punished because, okay, I stop casting all the time. I'm stopping casting all the time because I run out of mana. right? And so it is affecting the core functions of builds, to where the only way to really run a build these days is let's have it cost nothing at all, right? We can either leech it all back immediately, or it costs nothing at all and there's no issues whatsoever. Relying on mana has for a long time been really looked down upon because of the inconsistency and the punishment that you get from smothering. So I think this is a great change that will improve the quality of life for mana builds by quite a lot. So I think this is a big step in the right direction in terms of improving map mods. Splitting, now they only go to, okay, so only at 2. I guess that's fine. I thought it was kind of hilarious though sometimes with birds throwing out 4 projectiles at a time. Though one thing that having a splitting in maps would do if they exceeded 2 is that they would increase the shotgun effect. And so whenever you allow something like splitting to maintain in maps, you also allow, you increase the potential maximum damage output of the monsters by quite a lot, right? By adding this. Because if you can have 4 overlapping AoE effects all hitting you at the same time, you end up with the maximum amount of damage a player can take being a lot higher. And so you have to make the damage output of these monsters, say birds and other AoE style monsters that where you have overlapping AoEs, you have to then tone down their damage on their base level to where they cannot so that they don't get completely out of control when you add the splitting. So you can make them harder on normal maps. Those kind of monsters could end up being harder now in normal in the non-splitting maps, because splitting is no longer this outlier that can quad proj things. So this is also a good change, I think. We'll see how that turns out. But at least some of these mods are actually stifling some of the balance. So it's good. It's a good thing that they're changing these. They're removing blood magic. That's fine. It was such a rare one anyways that people would just roll over it. It didn't really have any impact. It was like the rare positive benefit from a blood magic build. We can talk about blood magic builds later. There's a lot to talk about those, but let's leave that for now. Exposure, max resist, going. This is this makes the life of heavy like RF builds a little bit easier. It makes the spike damage go down a bit, which is nice. I do think that the potential of damage increase before with exposure was a little bit high. So I think this is more in line with where it should be. So that is definitely I'm good with this. I'm good with this, especially if you're stacking resist. This is this helps a lot. You get wrecked less, right? So if you're stacking mitigation, which I think should be encouraged more, stacking mitigation, you get penalized less by this. So I am happy with this. I do know that they also introduced in this patch. It's not listed here, but they introduced other map mods. Some of them being less blockless armor, more accuracy, less evasion, I think. And there was one more, and I have to, like, in the talking about map mod changes, I have to emphasize my dislike for these, because they further penalize mitigation style builds and further emphasize just having a high base pool of life, and they further emphasize the strength of leech. So it is creating more disparity in the wrong direction again, and I have to just say that I disagree with the introduction of those map mods. I do not think that they fit into the idea of. I don't think they fit into the same ideas that some of these changes. They're just introducing new problems that just shouldn't be there in the first place. So it's a really odd thing to introduce. So I do not like that. Let's go on. General balance changes. Let's go over these quite quickly. Increased range of all melee weapons. Yeah, we talked about that earlier. Forsaken Masters. So quality of life to a lot of Forsaken Master, which is great. You don't have to run miles and miles to get back to your masters. They spawn on you after you finish the mission. Great. And less time to increase the master, or to level up the master missions. And I think that is fine. Sextant mod for additional currency is now only available on red maps. Okay. So some changes to that. I'm fine with that. Many monsters endgame has been rebalanced in cases where they did too little damage. And you see, this is good, right? With the previous modifiers to maps, like, again, they allow themselves to have an easier time balancing their monsters overall. Reduce the damage of the Bosses Nova Ruin. The Chaos Warbands, yeah, they're kind of crazy. I hope it's not too much. I think it is important that that people are investing in Chaos Resistance, though CI is there to mitigate that. But in general, I think in general having Chaos Resist as a valid resource investment, and that is something you should consider if you don't have immunity to it, should be a thing in the game. Just nerfing all the things that kill players without Chaos Resist is not the correct way of going about it. Even so, they might have been a little bit too strong. Lightning Warbands leaders in general have been and the damage, but I hear these are like really dangerous, so this is definitely gonna be dangerous. I think it's fine. I think like you can toss the bag a little bit and like just change up the dynamics a bit. I think that's good. Most totem damage, increase most totem damage, totem additional physical damage reduction, and totem attack. Cosby, like, okay, so totems are going to be insane, basically. Totem builds were already really strong, and so now they're increasing the power of totem nodes, and they are vastly, right, so you see here double all sorts of elemental totem resist, and physical damage reduction and all these kind of things. This is quite insane. They are vastly improving totems in general. So totems are going to be really insane. I think the good thing about this is that a lot of builds could not really utilize spell totem to a great effect, or it was very difficult getting enough survivability on your totems prior to this patch. In general. So I think the increased survivability on spell totems in general is actually pretty nice. I am actually for that. There are some builds out there like the Flame Blast totems and stuff that are going to get a buff from this. I don't think the Flame Blast totems before this were the strongest builds. I think there are something you need to like, they might wanna reconsider maybe the power of. But that's not really the totem's fault. That's more of a Flame Blast fault, I would say. But in general, I think that increasing the totem survivability increases the quality of life on these builds, meaning that they become a lot more fun to play, where you don't feel like you have to spam them and just hope that they don't get one shot by any elemental damage. So I think it's a good change. Cosprey, unique changes. Cosprey's got shit on. That's a good thing. A lot of people have voiced their concerns about just adding internal cooldown modifiers. I think that they should have them though. I think this is important, both for server stability, so you don't have these builds that just generate like 1 billion attacks per second. But the thing is, the balance on some of these things have been completely out of whack. Allowing something like Cosprey's to cast 10 times a second, where something like this would be impossible on a self-cast scenario, is not something you want to have happen. When you allow a skill to ignore the cast time, the normal cast time, we have to be very careful in terms of how many times you ignore it. So this is an important change, and I think it's something that they have finally understood, that they cannot allow to have items having these insane like this insane amount of like cast, because basically what you're doing is you're introducing cast speed to skills that should not have the cast speed in the first place. Basically, if you would take discharge and now you would lower its cast speed by 500%, so you would go from, I don't remember the cast speed right now, but let's assume it was like 0.8 and you lower it to 0.2, everyone would be out like in an uproar about the stupidity or the craziness and the imbalance of discharge being able to just be spammed. As long as you can generate the charges and you can just spam it, it's crazy. But then you put it on an item and it's A-okay. No, it's not. So this is a good change. Reduce block on Roomies. Roomies have for a long time had too much of a opportunity. It was when we talk about opportunity cost and block, Roomies gave you too much block for its low opportunity cost. So this is a good change to bringing this in line. I don't mind having some block on an item that is not on the shield and it is not in skill gems, but you cannot allow to have so much block on one item to, in the same, like, it will in the same sense just neuter every other idea of just creating a block build where you go with the skill nodes on the tree. Seems pretty pointless when you have something like Roomies. So this is a good change. Okay, so further on, Phase Breakers, the crit multiplier. So we're basically with the Phase Breaker change, they're kind of, Phase Breakers was the best damage item for crit builds. In most cases, it was the highest damage increase you could get. It probably still is for a variety of builds, since it will be the highest crit multiplier you can still get, I believe. I think that, what is it called? The Malagaros, I believe those are around 30%. Anyways, I think it's a good thing. I think it's healthy for the game to start kind of limiting the upper tiers of what of how much damage you can achieve, and kind of bringing it back a little bit. And this is what you're doing with a change like this, where Phase Breaker in the past was the end game damage item. When you take the best damage item and you lower the amount of damage it can give you, you also lower the total amount of damage a build can do, like that any build can do, being a crit build, which is a good thing because they were getting a little bit out of touch. So I think that is a good thing. Grand Spectrum, elemental damage reduced to 4, so nerfing that. I believe there were 5 before. But they like scale of each other, so this should be I haven't really played with Grand Spectrum, so I can't really talk too much about it, but I've heard that they are pretty insane and they're doing too much damage, so I'm for this. Artilex is a unique that uses power charge duration to make MOM better, or it uses power charge to increase the effect of MOM. MOM right now is not in a good space. In general, it's okay, and with some of the changes to the map mods, they could become better. They're starting to become a little bit better. And this item might actually be usable later on. The quality of life, having power charge duration is nice. It's not really an item that's getting used right now, but I think this is for someone who has used this amulet before. I like this change. It makes the item a lot more desirable for those kind of builds. Chill Ground, I've never used this bow. I can't really speak to that too much. Increase the chill effect of Chill Ground. Chill Ground is a strong effect, so this could have some. This could have some use, maybe. For some support character maybe. I'm not sure how this works, so I will have to look into that. What I do know how it works is Soul Strike, and its shield recharge rate has been, or the shield recharge, I think this is how, when it begins, like I think you start 100, or you started early, you started 150% quicker, now it's 80%, so this will reduce that which is a good thing, because this is one of the things, this is one of the items that were endgame items for some of the ES builds, some of the better ES builds were using this as an endgame item. So nerfing this will now bring down the power of some of the top tier ES builds. It was halved. And then we have something like Energy from Within, which was a staple in a lot of ES builds as well. Further reducing the power of ES builds. I know this does not seem like a lot, but I think it's important to understand that the problem with ES builds is the opportunity cost of a lot of the items is too low. Something like Soul Strike is giving you too much of an upside with too little of a downside, and the same thing goes with Energy from Within. And when you start bringing down Rumies, Soul Strike, Energy from Within, and Cosprey here, and a long slew of other mechanics and abilities and skills and uniques and all these kind of things, it will start reducing the power of ES builds, because these things are not affecting life builds at all. They're only affecting the top tier ES builds, so you're bringing them back in line. So people who are talking about wanting to get life and ES builds back in line, these are the things you should be happy about seeing. This might seem like a minor thing, but it's a minor thing in the right direction, and enough minor things in the right direction is just more things in the right direction. It's good. It's good. Be happy about it. Blade Vortex has been refactored, so now basically by stacking up more Blade Vortexes, you do more and more and more damage by the Blade Vortex. So it increases the value of having a high number of Blade Vortexes running at all times, which is a good thing, because mechanically and in the way the Blade Vortex works is right now you just have a few of them and you run through the map and that's fine. This will then increase the value of having more of them out, making the skill more interesting, because playing and maintaining those 20 is a lot more fun than just like getting a few and then just running through. So I think this changes Blade Vortex to be a more fun and interactive skill, and I am all for that. It's not, from my understanding, nerfing the skill damage-wise. There are other things that are indirectly nerfing Blade Vortex, but we'll come to those. Reduce maximum summon rating spirits. Again, they're reducing across the board, like the amount of things you can summon, the rate that you can cast spells, and all these kind of things. And they have been lowering them. And I think it is to some of these things where you had too many instances of summons and all these, they have a huge effect of performance in general. And so having a upper limit to how many things you can have spawn at the same time will increase performance because of that. So I'm not really sure what this will do to summon rating spirits. Damage seems to be the same. From my understanding, hatred and such is the same, but like flat damage becomes worse. If the damage efficiency on the gem stays the same, then additive damage from auras becomes worse, because you can have a total less amount of spirits out. War Chief does a little bit less damage. I think that is fine. War Chief, to at least for my liking, was doing a little bit too much. And then we have the center of the slam being a little bit further away, the totem's melee range. Oh, fix the behavior and the skill line. I'm not sure. I can't really speak to this actually. The range and stuff. You would have to ask someone else, because I haven't played with it and I do not know on the top of my head the range of the skill. So the changes with the melee range and stuff we would have to look into a little bit later. Scorching Ray deals a little bit more damage. I think that is justified. I played with it a bit, and it seemed to just lag a little bit. It was a fine functioning skill, but it could need a little bit of a damage buff, and it got that, and I think that is fine. Spectre now grants resist to its minions. Resist to minions is something that is, in general, to minions, totems, and all that. Ally damage is something that is very important to cap in the current state of the game if you want your minions to survive, so this helps that. So it really will help keeping your specters alive. That's a good thing. Deco Totem can no longer evade and has a 4-second cooldown at all levels. Oh, so you can't be spamming Deco Totem anymore. So you can't. That means less cheese with it, I presume. And let's say you have evasion on it, so it cannot just keep evading attacks. Say, like, yeah, so you put evasion on it, you put it on the boss, and the boss keeps evading it, or hitting and evading on it, and you have this immortal decoy. So I guess they don't want that. So removing some of the cheese. Blade Flurry is still insane. At least from a damage perspective, this is a joke in terms of, I'm just gonna put it blatantly, the damage output of Blade Flurry is a joke at this point. Some of the new numbers being put forth is that you're still, if you're doing the 6-stack and release, you still have 400% weapon, base weapon damage, which is compared to Earthquake, which is probably the best melee skill in terms of single target. In the perfect scenario, of attack sequenced with the secondary effect, you get 250 in a perfect scenario, 250, and Blade Flurry will always be able to achieve the 400 pretty much. And that is not assuming the helmet enchant, and with the Earthquake, you can pretty much guarantee that is assuming the helmet enchant to achieve that. So this is insane that they are allowing a pseudo range skill stay with the melee tags. Sure, this is something that has to be, like, this is a nerf. The targeting range, right? It's less of a ranged attack now. Now it's not spectral throw anymore. It's just a max stack reave instead. Like, it's not Vol reave, it's just normal reave in terms of AoE. With the rate, it's even better. I don't know. It's kind of like crazy. Also the radius of the slashes, that's good, right? The somewhat, but it's 14% reduced. I was playing around with a low level AoE and a decent amount of and all the air nodes, no cargos or anything, and I was off screening. And so this will just make it so that you just kill everything on the screen and you're not off screening anymore. I don't know, man. I know that the skill has to be interesting, but it is so, the disparity between Blade Flurry and all the other melee skills is so vast. I think they really have to start thinking about, like, this. I think Blade Flurry is doing around 100% damage too much. 300 I'm okay with, and then you bring up some of the other melee skills to hit the same mark of around 300, and then I think we have a semblance of balance. Right now, this is a complete mess. I really have to just reiterate how much of a mess I think this is, and the state of Blade melee skills damage in general. Blight has increased the damage from 5% level 1 up to 35. Blight was doing too little damage. I think there are some mechanical changes, more interesting things they could do with the skill to make it more interesting. But as a quick fix right now, I think this is fine. This will make Blight, actually, I think Blight, once people figure out a good build around it and how to properly itemize for it, I think Blight actually has a very good shot at being a stable, like a very stable gem. Especially with the totem changes, you could see, like, I could see Blight totems really good, especially with how tanky totems have become. I thought about it earlier about a Blight totem, and I dismissed the thought because I knew that the totems would die too quickly. So I think Blight will probably be in a quite balanced state, so I'm happy with this. Totems and all other minions now have resistance and chaos resistance. So not only are we getting the totem changes, where were they? Or did I lose track of them? I don't know. We had the totem changes, totem node changes, and then we get all totems are now just way more resistant to LE damage. So this will vastly improve the survivability of your totems. You are gonna have very little investment to cap out your totems, and it's gonna feel a lot better. Let's see here. Fire Cold Lightning Golems. do now have the respective, so they get a resistance to their respective whatever, and I think that is fine. The Chaos Golem now has 60 chaos resist, which is actually great. If you can already cap your resistance and then Chaos Golem gets another 60, this will make Chaos Golem a really tanky little fucker. So I actually like that a lot. In general, I like these. I like the fact that they are making golems better, and you can actually justify having a golem in, let's say you have a 4 slot. Let's say you just have a 4 slot that you're not really using for anything, and you would like to put a golem in there. Before you couldn't really justify it, but this definitely helps in justifying a slot for a golem. It might not always be the case, but just actually making them better, I think is great. I really like this, and so we'll see how good we can make the golems. Maybe you're gonna see some like meta niche, maybe not meta, but some niche like golem damage builds where the golem does the damage, but we'll see about that. I don't think that's really gonna be the case because they do have kind of wonky AI. Melee totem summon from the summoned skeleton now deal more damage, so a lot more damage on the summoned skeletons and a lot lower cast time. We'll see how good this can be. I'm not sure how much damage skeletons can actually put out, but with enough changes, stuff like this, people dismiss these changes to some of these skills and like, oh, it's still shit, but at some point you reach the target to where it goes from being shit to good, and then all of a sudden people find out some neat mechanic that people hadn't really thought about before, and then because the skeletons are actually in a decent spot already, it just jumps and it becomes really good. I don't think it's really gonna push the summon skeleton right now, but as you push, like 25% more damage is a lot. And 0.2 cast time, like this is a lot lower. Like this is change. Like this is a big buff for summon skeletons. So maybe we're gonna see some cute summon skeleton builds out there. We'll see. Some triggered skill can now find targets that are farther away. That's going to be interesting to see how this works. This will come down to testing that you can find targets further away. It might enable some trigger skills to function a lot better, so that could be interesting. Ranged attack totem is now in line with the normal spell totem, which is good. Ranged attack totem was complete shit before, so this is a buff to that. Maybe some ranged attack totem builds could be a thing now. We'll see about that. Maybe some wand attack totem, some wand build with the new stuff. I don't know. Yeah, maybe not. Minion and totem resist, now with a more multiplier. More multiplier, I don't know. They've kind of the whole idea of balancing everything around everything having a more multiplier, that you have to have that on every single gem. I'm not sure if I like that too much. Maybe it's just necessary. It's an easier way of making some of the slightly more utility style gems more interesting, like right now. So like it's okay. This will immediately make stuff like well, it'll make like Scorching Ray totems a lot better. Like anything that scales of elemental damage, more elemental damage. This might be a stable in RF totems, I could see. And I remember what else could this be good with? Well, any minion you would put on as well with the more, like, that could benefit from a more multiplier on LE damage. So this is definitely this is now a very strong gem with a lot of uses. So I'm okay with that. Trickster. I have not heard a lot of people talk about this, but if there is something like 8% damage, reduced damage, and this seems to be by all sources, since it's just 8% reduced damage just flat. It's not stating anything other than just reduced damage. And so I would assume it's reduced damage from everything. It's quite insane. With the changes to some of the map mods, mana is already better. Weave the Arcane is a good way of overcoming mana issues. I've tried out mana Weave the Arcane builds recently. I've tried 3 different variations, and it is actually Weave the Arcane as a node is quite potent in terms of mana regen if utilized correctly. And if you have a very fast attacking skill with a decent mana pool, it can completely solve all your mana issues on like non-MOM builds. It solves mana issues in CI builds, and it's good for MOM builds. The one thing about Trickster is it kind of defeats the purpose of the other node that Trickster has. But if you're using something that is not a movement skill and you can actually make use of this, it is very, very potent. It is very potent. 8% damage reduction on one of the most defensive ascendancies already is very strong. I don't think people have fully understood that you have the ES and evasion node on there already. Now you add a damage reduction to it as well. You're entering the realm where Trickster is now one of the most defensive. If it can utilize with the Arcane, it becomes one of the most defensive classes. So it is very powerful. You might wonder how do I utilize 200 mana, but it just spent total of 200 mana recently, and recently is 200 mana over 4 seconds. So if you have a skill that will cost you 50 mana per second or more, you will have this enabled, and this is very, very easy to do and to get use of. Raider, huge buffs for Raider. Raider was already somewhat strong, just kind of outshined by some of the other ascendancies. One thing that I always wanted on Raider, and I think this is the key part to look at, is the Way of the Poacher, now giving you a chance on hitting unique enemies, so you have 100% uptime on frenzy charges. Melee builds prior to this, melee Raider builds were felt terrible to play because you had to go into melee range to hit with frenzy. It felt really, really bad. And if you added other frenzy items, a lot of the frenzy items out there have reduced frenzy duration. So you would end up with like a 5-second frenzy duration, and you would have to have the on-kill effects, which were if you just spend just a little time traveling, you would drop them all, and it took a long time to like get them back and all that, and it felt really, really clunky. This makes it so much easier. I cannot stress how much of a quality of life this is for the general frenzy build. This is a huge buff for that style of build, making the whole idea of getting the maximum effect out of frenzies a lot better. So this is a huge buff. Then you have the Flicker Strikers, which can then further benefit from it to the point where you can possibly get to the point where you could kill bosses by just flickering on them. I think you need there needs to be a little bit more. I could see maybe you had like a writing jar in there. You could like pop that to get a few extra charges. There are a few things you could do to further increase the amount of frenzy charge you could have on a boss fight, to where you could actually start killing bosses with frenzy and just frenzying on them, and that is actually pretty cool to actually have frenzy builds out there. Then we have all the other things, right? They're making their minor adjustments of all the other things. Avatar of the Veil is actually a powerful ascendancy already. It has Avatar of the Veil has elemental status ailment immunity, which is very powerful. Freeze, cold, and fire. And then you have all the dodge, and if you stack dodge, it becomes to the same point of block. So if we can get to a point where we can get enough life, total life on these builds, the amount of damage mitigation that is hidden within the Raider is really high. It is underappreciated, and if we can now at the same time really benefit from all these frenzy charges, there are a lot of potential within Raider that has been unlocked with these changes, to the point where it might start rivaling some of the core ascendancies. And also one you have to understand that placement, when you want to compare it to like Assassin versus Raider, well, there is something about placement also in the tree. Some builds don't actually want to start Assassin all the time, so it can be a plus just starting at Raider, and maybe you're trying to achieve kind of the same thing and you get the buffs of the Raider. So it's I like it. A big huge change is Flash Charge generation. Flash Charge and Critical Strike, characters can now only receive 1 flash per critical strike every 200 milliseconds. This is shared across all flasks. So basically you can get 5 flash charges per second, and it is shared between all. So you can get 1 flash charge per second for all of them, if you spend all of them. This is huge, especially for something like Blade Vortex. What this does, and what I'm kinda it shifts how you have to view this. Just attacking really fast or hitting with the spell really fast, it critting a lot quickly, is no longer straight up better than critting consistently but slower. So Master Surgeon, 100% chance, right? So you can control, if you, let's say you have close to 100%, let's say you have close to crit cap, and you have 5 attacks per second, you can actually benefit 100% from this node. Before, this was heavily favoring very, very fast attacking builds. Now this becomes a little bit more interesting to where, okay, how can I truly utilize this for some builds? Well, I wanna match the crit chance and the crit rate to the Master Surgeon node. So that is pretty interesting, and it severely neuters Vinctars and these other like heavy flash style builds that solely work through just critting and generating flash charges through critting. Now you have to invest in reduced flask, you have to invest in the flash nodes that is reducing the flash cost and so forth, right? So you have to start investing in other ways of getting flash charges to get the same kind of effect that this will give you before, which is a welcome change. Satellite mods, standard mods available. Okay, these are available for those who are interested in those. Nothing to talk about there really. One-time passive skill reset, like we always get, right? If you have a standard character or a hardcore character, now you can just reset your skills and you can have fun with that if you're into that. So that is good. I really want to just really want to emphasize also what this does for CI builds. Like a lot of the most potent CI builds out there were heavily taking advantage of this, and so I think the builds in general that really benefited mostly from this were CI builds. And one of the reasons why CI builds again take advantage of these the most is because they do not have to utilize also Wormblaster RIP, but they utilize flash generation a lot better because there is again we talk about opportunity cost. They don't have to use life potions. So they have two more utility flasks that are not going to be permanent anymore. So basically, because you don't have 5 utility flasks that are being permanent anymore, the difference between having 5 utility flasks being only usable like sometimes versus having 3 of them being usable sometimes versus having 5 all the time and 3 all the time is really it's helping with the disparity between, again, ES builds that did not need health potions and then the life builds that were needing to use life potions, where you didn't get this huge buff from the utility flask. So this is again, this is a way to address disparity between life and ES, even though it doesn't say we nerfed ES nodes by 1% on all nodes. So this is something that is, again, helping that issue. Fix bug, also a lot of bug fixes. Is there any like substantial ones? Temporal change still didn't affect Blight. Okay, so this is a slight buff to Blight. Let's see, Culling Strike against burning only applied to enemies rather than any other reasons. Okay, so if they're burning through Scorching Ray, you can now call them. Okay, fair enough. So some quality of light changes to that. That is good. Or fixes. So yeah. It doesn't seem that there are too many bug fixes that are like that impactful. Anyways, I think overall, I think the changes that I'm seeing, they're doing a lot of off-meta build changes to bring them more in line. I think that's important. I think it's just as important to bring quality to items and to builds and skill gems that were not previously thought as being very good. A lot of people will say, oh, but who cares about these? Yeah, exactly. Who cares about them? The point is you should care. And I'm happy to see that they are doing some changes to those things. I think balance-wise, there's a lot of good balance changes, a lot of good feature changes. Just overall, this is from a patch perspective. I'm liking what they're doing in a broad sense. There are a few places where I question, especially with the map mods. But overall, I really like the approach, the balanced approach that they have taken this time around. We still need to address double dipping, poison, fire, and those kind of things, and the disparity between elemental ailments applied by players. I think that is a big overhaul that needs to change, to happen. So to expect that to happen here, I thought was a little bit. I think you're naive if you think that would happen in this patch. But one thing I would like them to see going forward though, I want them to see to actually start doing changes to some skill gems during the actual league, so we don't have to wait 3 months for things to get interesting. I really would like to see them just starting to buff throughout the league some of the melee gems, some of the things that are just way too underpowered. I can maybe get behind maybe not taking away power from players during the league, because people have been planning them out and stuff like that. But adding a little bit of power here and there into the league on things that are clearly underpowered, I think could be a welcome way of balancing. So maybe that would be nice. But overall, I think a very good patch this time around. I'm very happy to see what they've done this time around, at least. So yeah, hope you learned something about some of these some of my thoughts. Yeah, not too much else to say right here. These were my first impressions. So yeah, if you wanna join in on the conversation, then throw a comment. And for right now, I'm gonna jump to my live chat, and we're gonna have a talk on the patch. So until next time, I'll see you guys.